Hi guys, this video is brought to you today by my friend Shin, aka Weird8 Productions. Visit his channel with the link in the description to see his short films and his movie and cartoon compilations. With tablets on shaky ground, it made me think that I should talk about why I stopped using tablets in my day-to-day life. I get a notification from 9 to 5 Google that said that Google took away the tablet section on their Android website. Because their Android website shows off pretty much all of their products. You know, the Android phones, Android watches, Android TVs from pretty much any manufacturer that makes them. And unfortunately, I got word that they just excluded tablets from the tablet section on their website. And particularly in the case of Android, we kind of saw this coming, mainly because Android tablets haven't sold well, and it seems like Google has pretty much given up on them. I mean, they didn't even announce like a successor to the Google Pixel C a year and 2 years after it, and now the Pixel C is pretty much obsolete since it came out the same year as Nexus, the Nexus 5X and the Nexus XP, which are, now pretty much irrelevant. But I don't really think it's a case of Google losing to Apple and Microsoft. I think it's just a sign that the tablet market used to be super relevant and now it's teetering on being irrelevant. And what I mean by that is when you look at it's just not only a thing you could see in numbers, but it's just kind of a thing you see out there. I mean, we see, people, whether it be at college or at the Starbucks, people aren't, typing on, iPads these days. They're usually on a computer, or they're there, doing, going on Facebook and other social networks using their smartphones. And through this, through thinking about the subject of, why are tablets, dying, or at least they're not as relevant as they used to be, it got me thinking about why did I stop using a tablet? I mean, mind you, I've really only owned one tablet, but I've used many others from the likes of, Samsung, Apple, Microsoft. I've owned one tablet, the first generation iPad mini, which actually still works fine. Now, for that case, I stopped using it, not just because, I've moved on to other devices, but only because it was slowing down. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So when I ask myself the question of why did I stop using tablets, why personally, it was sort of an evolutionary process. Before I had my own computer, I was just using the ratchety old desktop my family used. It was a compact Presario from the year 2005, and I pretty much used it. Just got slower and slower, and yet I kept using that thing even into the year 2013. And in the year, and so that's where I did most of my computing. That's even where I did a lot of my video editing back when I was just using Windows Movie Maker. And, the iPad was announced in 2010. I remember watching Steve Jobs. He announced there was a lot of buzz over Apple's going to announce a tablet. And I didn't know what a tablet was at the time. And then I found out, oh, it's basically a big screen, touch screen sort of computer, like basically a giant smartphone. And, when it was announced, I actually didn't really get it at first. Let me actually see if I can. Oh, there it is. The other thing I was using on top of a computer at the time was like, oh, I got a second generation iPod Touch, which the battery sort of works. It's 10 years later. But, why do I need this? I got my iPod Touch. If I wanted to watch a movie, I'll just go on YouTube. If I want to play a game, I'll just pull this out, and since this fits in the pocket, why do I need this thing? That wasn't until I saw a TV ad for the iPad, and I noticed that in the ad, I'll try to have footage here in this video, that they were using pages, and it was just like, oh my god, this device would be so much better to type on. Like if I'm typing like a school report, I wasn't taking notes in class using electronics back then. I was still, using pen and paper for that. But it's like if I need to do a school report, a PowerPoint presentation, or if I'm working on, and yeah, if I want to go on the internet, it's so much better than, using this small 3.5-inch screen on my iPod Touch. And I honestly didn't really act on it until Christmas 2013 came out. Even though it was out for about a year, I saw that there was the iPad Mini, the first generation iPad Mini, and I was just like, "Yep, it fits. It's so relatively compact size. It's much smaller than a 9.7-inch iPad, but it's just the right size, big enough screen, and but it's not gonna be, overly cumbersome." So, I asked my mom to get it, and I got it for a Christmas present. And I started typing up notes, and I think around the time I was starting to be able to use a computer or tablet to type notes. And I remember I would take it to my AP literature class to type up notes on. And even when I moved on, I graduated from high school, went on to college, I still took my iPad. And when I got into college, I started using computers a lot more. Pretty much every class I was in, unless I was told I can't use a laptop to take notes, I was taking notes on that iPad using Google Docs and Slides. And then, a bunch of things, kind of led into why I stopped using that iPad. I mean, one was because it was just starting to get old. That iPad came out in 2012, and, years go on, 2013, 2014. 2015 and so on. Even when it first came out, it was kind of sluggish. I don't think the Apple A5 was really a well-designed chip. But as the years went by, I started getting slower and slower. But also because I started, I got a job, at a newspaper. Initially, I was a photojournalist, and then I started getting into video. And, if you're going to be doing, a lot of it, even though, yes, you could import pictures from a camera into a iPad, I have to import a lot of photos. My newspaper wanted us to have 10 plus pictures and take a lot of videos. So I couldn't really do that. I mean, Lightroom, on an the iPad was nowhere near as intuitive and as practical as the PC version. Like you couldn't sync a bunch of sync your settings across a whole ton of photos, if you know what I'm talking about. So I ended up so I needed a computer a lot more. And around that same time, my mom was realizing that, yeah, our 2005 compact was, really getting old, and we started buying laptops. So I started, to use, I went through a couple Toshiba laptops. I was taking one of the Toshiba laptops to school, and then and then I got a much more powerful HP laptop. I started taking that, and then when that broke down, I ended up taking the Toshiba back to school. And then when that broke down, I decided to switch to Mac because it's not that PC sucked. It was because I felt that Macs would handle things for me a lot better, at least in terms of the interface. It was nowhere near as buggy, and there wasn't as much freeware as there was on a PC. But the long and short of it was I moved up to laptops because I needed something more powerful to edit on, because I was taking, lots of pictures, and I started getting into making videos. And, carrying around a laptop, it's not, even though, yeah, it's not as compact as a tablet, it's not impossible. I was still able to stick my laptop in my backpack, whether it be either one of my PC laptops or my MacBook, and take it to school. So, this kind of, defeated the purpose. Tablets just weren't as powerful, and the tablet versions of apps were nowhere near as practical as the desktop versions. And when I needed to do mobile computing, like if I needed to jump on social media, like if it was live tweeting or if it was checking the news, I was using a smartphone. Around the same time as I started getting into laptops, I started buying smartphones. I started with the LG Ultimate 2, an Android phone. I moved up to Nexus 5X, and then I moved up to the iPhone SE, and now I have, the iPhone 7. Regardless of not, having a headphone jack, I was still able to, check, my first social media updates, check the news, a lot of breaking news updates I got through phone. So just defeated the purpose because I needed a laptop to do editing, and if I was going to do lighter work like check social media or maybe every now and then do small edits on like a Google Doc, I could just use my iPhone instead or the Android phones when I had one of those back in the day. So for me, that's just what happened, and and tablets just kind of, I just didn't feel the need for them anymore. Now, what future do tablets have? Do they even have a future? And personally, I think it really depends on the kind of consumer. In terms of like professionals or the creatives, I don't I could see like the tablets like the Microsoft Surface having a future because they're basically they are a computer. They have laptop specs put into a thin tablet package. The user interface may not be tablet friendly, but they could still use it to watch videos. Or like my friend Gabby, she uses a Microsoft Surface to do like drawings. So and it's also a full-fledged computer, so she can get onto Premiere when she needs to make movies for a class. So in terms of the professional market, I could see the Surface having a future. iPads, maybe, like if you're a creative with, money to shell and you want to get like an Apple Pencil and an iPad Pro to do, drawings on an iPad once in a while. Maybe, but in terms of professionals, I see more of a future with, the Microsoft Surface. Which on that note, on the note of the Microsoft Surface, this isn't just me bowing down to Microsoft. What I will say is that if you want to get into video, I highly recommend getting a Microsoft Surface book, especially ones that have the GPU built, the discrete GPU built in, because if you're going to be doing color grading, you're not getting anywhere with just a Intel processor. You need a discrete graphics processor to do color grading. And since the Surface book has much more modern specs than the MacBook I'm using, I'm pretty sure you can get away with even with a moderate color grading. As long as you're not doing, something on like Hollywood level, you should be okay. In terms of like mass market consumers, I look at like when you go to like now my former college, you would expect everybody to be using like an iPad, but I found out that no, everybody's using either a MacBook, Microsoft Surface, or even a PC laptop. And I think on that end, it's because people, even if they don't use a lot of PC specific applications, they are aware that technically a PC, you could do PC or Mac, you could do so much more. You could install tons more apps, not just from the Microsoft or Apple app stores, but you can also download them from the internet. Whether it be, software like, iTunes or Spotify. I mean, yes, you could obviously get them on, a tablet or a smartphone, but it does have the peace of mind that, you could pretty much get anything else you wanted off the internet. It's kind of like the Wild West in that way. So that's where I think. In terms of the Google perspective, it does. I mean, I am kind of surprised that Chromebooks took off, but again, and I think that's the other thing about laptops too. Laptops and Chromebooks, they both have the keyboard built in. And funny story, my PR professor said that she's. I think it was that. I think it was actually like her child, like her child going to school, they first gave iPads, but then they switched to Microsoft Surface because they had the keyboard attachment. I mean, yes, obviously, you could get keyboard attachments for the iPad, but also, because, I think also because, a Microsoft Surface is a legit PC, so you could get, other applications if you needed them. You didn't just need to rely on the Microsoft App Store. So I honestly just think, tablets are in a really murky spot. And one other thing I should mention is that even in the case of the iPad, I mean, yes, Apple definitely still has faith in their iPad. I mean, they just upgraded their free E49 one with a new model, and there's rumors that there's going to be a new iPad Pro. But do you notice with the iPad Pro especially, they're really marketing it as more of a computer? Like even in their advertising, they say, hey, it's like a computer, especially if you add our keyboard attachment. And but if a tablet is going to be more like a computer, then what's the point? I think in the Apple ecosystem, a lot of people are like, if an iPad's just going to be like a computer, then why don't I just buy a MacBook, even if it costs a lot more money to get one? So tablets right now are in a really, sort of murky place. Part of it is because people don't really see the point anymore. And the other thing too is because, smartphones now, we don't live in the 3.5-inch or 4-inch smartphone era now. We now live in an era where smartphones are 4.7 inches, 5 inches, 5.5 inches, even 6 inches, just like that HTC U12 Plus I talked about in another video. So I'm really not sure what the future is. Even if tablets become marketed as more like a computer, I don't see the point, and I don't think a lot of consumers see the point in tablets anymore. I still think they're great devices on their own, don't get me wrong. Every time I go to an Apple store, I always want to check out the latest iPads. Or when I go to a Best Buy, I want to see the latest Microsoft Surface. Same with, going to a Microsoft store. But, I don't, but in terms of in a broader, more practical ecosystem, I'm not really sure what the future is. If they advertise more like computers, I think more and more people will just say, well, if it's more like a computer, then what's the point? So unless, there really is a practical reason for tablets, can come back, I think people for now will just stick to a laptop or Chromebook or a smartphone, unless, all tablets, become something like the Microsoft Surface. And again, not just because Microsoft's in the name, but because the Surface in itself is inherently a computer. Unless they go that route, which even then it just begs the question, what's the point? I'll just get a computer. So until, we find a practical use again, if I could personally have another one of those moments, just like when I discovered, Pages on the iPad is so much more practical than Pages on the iPhone. Unless I have a moment like that again, I don't really see the point. So alright guys, my foot's getting numb. This has been Blood Moon Bobby, and please follow me for my continuing WWDC and E3 coverage. I'm going to continue making videos leading up to both conventions. If you have any ideas for any E3 or WWDC related videos, please feel free to send me an email. My email address is in the description. So thanks guys for watching, and my foot is getting super, super numb, and I'll see you guys later. Hey guys, this has been a Blood Moon Bobby video. Please like this video or dislike it, and please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.